This episode of Bend the Knee is brought to you by Sir Fluffhead of Gamehenge, formerly known as Brown Ben Zaza, whose words are, I come from the land of darkness, I come from the land of doom, I come from the land of Gamehenge, from the land of the big baboon.
Hello and welcome to Bend the Knee, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast. I am Sir Matt, the Bud Knight.
And I am Sir Ezra the Watchful. Welcome to our Song of Ice and Fire book club. Today we are into chapter 33, Eddard VIII of A Game of Thrones. In a World of Ice and Fire, we are discussing the Riverlands.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, bigger. Now that we're in the World of Ice and Fire, we're in our kind of bigger region studies.
Yeah,
the Riverlands. Some interesting stuff about the Trident we will get to here. I just kind of found interesting about some of the wars and how the Ironborn actually were able to use the Riverlands to their advantage.
Yeah, for a long time
in the day.
Yeah.
Right. So,
right. Actually,
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, as we get into it, when I was doing my research today, the Riverlands is one of those kind of like Highgarden, changed quite a bit, after the conquest.
Yeah.
So it's actually worth a good history study, because of how much it's changed.
And you don't really think about it, but most of the books actually take place in or around the Riverlands. It is kind of that central region. We just don't really ever think of it, but almost. I mean, Arya, all of her running around is pretty much in the Riverlands. Jaime and the Riverlands,
the Brotherhood,
Brienne, everything. It's kind of that it connects the north and the south, and
it's surrounded on.
Gets put right there in the middle.
Yeah. Yep. So this is a good one to do today.
So, all right. Yeah. All right. At the beginning of our show, we just like to remind people you can send us a raven at btkcast@gmail.com. We answer your ravens, questions, anything you want. So we just like to do that. So let's go ahead and move on over to Small Council. Sir Ezra, how are you doing today?
Doing okay. Looking forward to some, get some football on later tonight. Looking forward to watching that. So I think the Browns and the Bengals play, don't they? Is it today?
Maybe.
Am I right? I think so.
Have to take a look.
But anyways, I'm looking forward to some football action. So just trying to relax, it's been a stressful couple weeks, but just trying to chill out here on the weekend and, have a good time. So how about you, buddy?
Hey man, I'm good. I'm going out and chopping some wood later today, get preparing for winter.
Yeah.
Does
winter come out there
off,
or
so.
is it always
not
winter?
Yet. It's supposed to start raining soon. It hasn't done it quite yet, but I believe it is soon upon us. So
that's funny.
Yeah, so I went to this kind of night market thing last night. It's kind of this cool little trendy shops and kind of stuff, and had actually went to this cool place. They do s'mores, like you just but they do use a blowtorch. It's pretty cool.
That's cool. That's awesome. Actually, I forgot to mention last night I went out with another podcasting buddy and listened to the legend of Sleepy Hollow, which was actually kind of cool. Got to see the headless horseman riding around, scared to death, but it was fun. It was outside, nice and cool. Yeah. Good fall weather. Got the flannel on, so it's feeling good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not much for flannel. I'm not really a flannel person.
Isn't flannel worn out there quite a bit though, in Portland?
Yeah, it is.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, they're all about it. Yeah. They're all about it.
That's great. Good people out there then. Good people.
So, all right. Well, there's not really a lot of news, Sir Ezra.
Yeah.
I was trying to dig up some news this week, and there's really Kind of nothing. Kind of a slow week.
Yeah. Well, hey, sometimes no news can be good news. Maybe things are just moving along. Everybody's working, doing their thing. So
that's the hope. Is that Gur's getting some work done.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, to kind of parallel this chapter, that silence that Stannis Baratheon, left the realm with when he went to Dragonstone. I mean, so it can be a bad thing. It could be things are, we're working on something. Maybe Gur's working on something. The show's still working. I don't know. It's just, it's kind of that still. Maybe it's the calm before the storm.
Yeah. Hey, you and I are always working on something. That's for sure.
That's for sure. That's right. We're here. So
yeah, we're here. All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive into the Maester's study and talk a little bit about the Riverlands.
Mm-hmm.
So as always, I kind of like to pull up just the first little bit and dive into it. Much history, rife with both glory and tragedy, has been made in the lands watered by the river Trident and its three great vassal streams. Stretching from the neck to the banks of the Blackwater, the east to the borders of the Vale, the Riverlands are the beating heart of Westeros. No other land of the Seven Kingdoms has seen so many battles, nor so many petty kings and royal houses rising and falling. The causes of this are clear. Rich and fertile, the Riverlands border on every other realm in the Seven Kingdoms save Dorne, yet have few natural boundaries to deter invasion. The waters of the Trident make the land ripe for settlement, farming, and conquest, whilst the river's three branches stimulate trade and travel during peacetime, and serve as both roads and barriers in times of war. And then just another thing right here, just going to talk about the Trident a little bit. Mm-hmm. The importance of the Trident to the region was never made clearer than when King Harwin, the grandfather of Harren the Black, fought over the Riverlands with Storm King Eric. The Ironborn Reavers were able to achieve dominance on the rivers and use them as a means to transport forces swiftly between far-flung strongholds and battlefields. The Storm King suffered his worst defeat at the crossing of the Blue Fork near Fairmarket, where the long ships proved decisive in allowing the Ironborn to seize the crossing despite Eric's superior numbers. I just find it interesting that at some point the Storm King, fell at the Trident, which is, just right. Odd considering when we think of, the Stormlands just winning the big huge victory over the Targaryens. So,
right, yeah, I mean that's seems to be a spot where people, big battles are held. I mean, honestly, right above and around and below the God's Eye, a lot of battles took place there. In the Dance of the Dragons and in Aegon's Conquest. Definitely a place that's been fought over quite a bit. I almost like, how does the Riverlands continue to function? It's sort of like, when you look at it on the map, it's true. It's surrounded on all, sides, and it is a fertile land, So it's just kind of strange, I guess, that like.
Right. Well, when you start to look at the regions. When you start to look at the regions around it, the Riverlands is kind of flat. You have the mountains of the Vale to the east, and then, you have the Westerlands to the west, and that's kind of rocky and hilly as well. And then the north, it gets kind of cold. And so it's just flat, and so it just seems like it's so easy to just march armies through it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the only problem you come into is when you have to cross a river, especially if you have to go, cross a particular bridge, but...
Right. And it looks like too, at one point we're talking about the history of the Riverlands, and so I think as you know now in our series, River Run is sort of the head seat. House Tully, we'll get to it in a second here, is sort of running the show. But back in the day, Harrenhal was the place, right? That was sort of the major keep there, and. The Ironborn had done a lot of, had basically taken over. They were running the Riverlands there for a long while. So, but then eventually, so its history is just kind of interesting in how it's passed hands. And I think sometimes we get caught up thinking that, how the House Tully has always been there. They've always been there, but that they were always in power or in control, right. Or what have you.
Yeah, well, it seems like if you just when we start looking at the history of the Riverlands too, it seems like every major event in Westeros almost takes place at the Riverlands.
Yeah.
When you go all the way back to the Dawn Age, this is where you have the Isle of Faces there, and that's where the pact was signed when they were fighting with the Children of the Forest.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so you have that, and then you have obviously, Robert Baratheon beating Rhaegar at the Battle of the Trident. And you can look at Harrenhal. I mean, that was kind of one of the first big, huge battles of Aegon's conquest.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Are we setting ourselves up for something? People have been saying, what if the Night King falls at the Trident?
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely something we've talked about, it being a place of importance. Once again, yeah, and real quick, the Trident. In case I think Sir Matt just kind of mentioned it and talked about it. But when you really look at the map, the reason it's called that is because of the three, rivers that take that spring from it. Really, you've got the Red Fork,
mm-hmm.
The Blue Fork, and the Green Fork. And so the Green Fork
mm-hmm.
takes off north. The Blue Fork heads over to the Iron Islands, sort of that Iron Man's Bay. And then the Red Fork stretches all the way across over into the Westerlands. So kind of neat. I guess I never really. It helps me wrap my mind around those different references in our story. When they're crossing the Green Fork, the Blue Fork, and the Red Fork. So cool. If you get a chance to go look at that on the map, pretty neat.
Yeah, I do kind of like I'm just going to read again here from the book how it just kind of describes the branches of the Trident. So you have the Red Fork. It says colored by the mud and silt that tumbles down from the western mountains. The Green Fork, whose mossy waters emerge from the swamps of the neck, and the Blue Fork, named for the purity of its sparkling, spring-fed flow.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think again that's something else to think about in these regions, because I think sometimes when we think about regions, we just kind of think of like, oh, it's just like you're from the north, whereas you and I often bring up the difference in Dornish, right? Like the sandy Dornish as opposed to like the stony Dornish.
Yeah.
So you've got those like hills, and then you kind of get down to Sunspear. So I think that's also something to kind of the neck actually is quite big,
mm-hmm.
and the Riverlands, excuse me. You've got that kind of swampy area up in the top before it kind of gets into the north.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And how that all kind of connects.
Something that I just noticed that's kind of interesting too. Look at the twins and think about how when Robb Stark is coming down and he needs to sort of he's trying to take out some of the Lannisters or move over into Lannister territory. He either can cross at the twins or he has to go clear down to near where the Trident is. He has to follow the King's Road all the way down. So it's a huge barrier that like the Green Fork for him to kind of cross an army with, So it's either cross way up north there or take his army all the way down and they'd almost be out of position to surprise, any of the Lannisters. So it's kind of cool when you look at it, strategically from Robb's point of view, coming through the Riverlands and why he made the deal and the pact that he made with Walder Frey. Makes a lot more sense. So
right.
But here, I think two paragraphs on here. The true history of the Riverlands began with the coming of the Andals. After crossing the narrow sea and sweeping over the Vale, these conquerors from the east moved to make their own, sailing their longships up the Trident and its three great branches. In those days, it seems that the Andals fought in bands behind chieftains, who the later septons would name kings. Piece by piece, they encroached upon the many petty kings whose realms the Riverlands watered. So there's sort of your start, and that the Andals are heavily, they're big influencers in the Riverlands. We know they kind of landed there near the Vale and came across the mountain range there, and then and this is saying too they came up through the Trident and into the Riverlands. So that's sort of how that all began. But actually, to back up a little bit, weren't there some kings though? Weren't there some? Let me see here. During the long centuries that when the first men reigned supreme in Westeros, countless petty kings rose and fell. Okay, so there's just numerous. They don't really mention like a name. I don't think. I don't see one here anyways. Few legendary kings and heroes on the weathered stones and runes whose meaning are now disputed at the Citadel. Thus, whilst singers and storytellers may regale us with colorful tales of Artos the Strong, Florian the Fool, Nine-Fingered Jack, Shara the Witch Queen, and the Green King of the God's Eye, the very existence of such personages must be questioned by the serious scholar. So, not a whole lot there, I guess, back in the time of the first men. So we don't really know a whole lot still.
And yeah, we don't. And it also, as we get into when they came over and like the Andals come over and they start to bring the Seven, it seems like the Riverlands is one. You can almost argue it's kind of the most important region to the Children of the Forest. And I'll get to that here in a second. And it also seems like it's kind of a huge part of the Andals because of the Seven. So I'm going to kind of read a longer passage here because I just find it kind of interesting here. Songs speak to us the years of the fall of Maidenpool and the death of its boy king, Florian the Brave, fifth of his name, of the Widow's Ford, where 3 sons of Lord Derry held back the Andal warlord Vorian Viprin and his knights for a day and a night, slaying hundreds before they fell themselves. Of the night in the White Wood, where supposedly the Children of the Forest emerged from beneath a hollow hill to send hundreds of wolves against an Andal camp, tearing hundreds of men apart beneath the light of the crescent moon, of the great battle of Bitter River, where the brackens of Stonehenge and the black woods of Raventree Hall made common cause against the invaders, only to be shattered by the charge of 777 Andal knights and 7 septons, bearing the 7-pointed star of the faith upon their shield. The 7-pointed star went everywhere the Andals went, borne before them on shields and banners embroidered on their surcoats, sometimes incised into their very flesh. In their zeal for the 7, the conquerors looked upon the old gods of the first men and the Children of the Forest as little more than demons, and fell upon their weirwood groves, sacred to them with steel and fire, destroying the great white trees wherever they found them, and hacking out their carved faces. The great hill called High Heart was especially holy to the first men, as it had been to the Children of the Forest before them. Crowned by a grove of giant weirwoods, ancient as any that had been seen in the 7 kingdoms, High Heart was still the abode of the children and their greenseers. When the Andal king Erig the Kingslayer surrounded the hill, the children emerged to defend it, calling down clouds of ravens and armies of wolves, or so the legends tell us. Yet neither tooth nor talon was a match for the steel axes of the Andals, who slaughtered the greenseers, the beasts, and the first men alike, and raised beside the High Heart a hill of corpses half again as high, or so the singers would have us believe. True history suggests otherwise, insisting that the children had abandoned the Riverlands long before the Andals crossed the narrow sea, but however it happened, the grove was destroyed. Today only stumps remain where once weirwoods stood.
Wow.
So there's kind of a lot to pick out of that kind of passage right there. So first of all, you have the Isle of Faces, and it seems like High Heart is also a very kind of sacred area to the children, and then of course the first men as well. So I mean, what do we think about that, knowing kind of High Heart's history?
Well, yeah, it's because I think of the weirwood network, and that they were giant trees. They were like these giant trees that were kind of in a circle. It was almost like maybe they made it a place that was a sanctuary. So yeah, it's still significant. We have the ghost of High Heart still kind of walking around and all upset there, and we encounter those stumps actually. I believe Arya comes across them. So
yeah, she does when she's meeting the ghost of High Heart. And High Heart and the Isle of Faces are almost like, I mean, they're not like directly next to each other, but they're relatively close.
Yeah, it's not too far. Yeah. So, And that is the Isle of Faces is sort of where those green seers went, right? Is that not the rumor that that's
right.
the last sort of place they went? So a lot of them were slain and killed here. I think it's interesting that the children called down ravens and wolves.
Right. That is kind of another thing, because that could go a bunch of different ways and theories. With like Three-Eyed Raven and the Starks and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's starting to make a lot of sense. It's starting to kind of that they had those that they were allies to, or that they could command or control. Control, I think, is the word. Ravens and wolves. So you've got Bloodraven, who they can have got in their service, and then they're trying to get Bran Stark up there as well. So.
Right. So question, Sir Ezra, is it do the children control the Three-Eyed Raven?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think they do. I don't know. Because I've always thought something mischievous was going on there, and I'm not quite sure. But I think that's their weapons. That's what they can use is green seeing.
Right.
They can use their powers. So, yeah, like warging is also kind of close to that, talent. So, and the Starks are kind of close to the First Men. They always claim, that they've got this heritage with the First Men. So, in this situation, High Heart was a place that was revered by the First Men too. So, I don't know. There just seems to be a strong correlation between the children, and then once they had made their pact and stuff, had found common cause and sort of fighting off the Andals. And the Andals bring with them the Seven, and they prevailed, So, which is interesting. I love that the 777 knights, which is pretty cool. So something in that number.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, so should we move up a little bit more to more recent times? Maybe talk a little bit about House Tully and some of the bigger houses that are kind of in here.
Yep.
So the Tullys of Riverrun were never kings, though the books of lineage will show any number of connections to their dynasties of the past. It may have been these old connections that started House Tully on its path to becoming Lord Paramounts of the Trident under Aegon the First. The Tully name appears in many chronicles and annals of the Trident back unto the days of the First Men, where the first Edmure Tully and his sons fought besides the Hammer of Justice, Christopher IV, Mud, in many of his 99 victories. After Christopher's death, Sir Edmure went over the mightiest of the Andal conquerors, Armistead Vance. It was from him that Edmure's son Axel received a grant of lands at the juncture of the Red Fork and its swift-running vassal, the Tumblestone. There, Lord Axel established his seat in a red castle he named Riverrun. Mm-hmm. Placed as it was, Riverrun soon proved to have great strategic value, and the petty kings contended during the Age of Anarchy and during the Age of Anarchy soon began to vie for the support of House Tully. Axel and his descendants grew wealthy and powerful, and in time became the bulwark of many a river king, for they defended the Trident's western marches against the Kingdom of the Rock.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So in a way, you could almost argue, you look at kind of the Tyrells, right now in the beginning of where we're at in the first couple of books, where obviously they are the seat of the Reach, but the Lannisters are kind of that richest family in Westeros, and the Tyrells are kind of like just slowly building. Hey, let's just build. We don't need to involve ourselves in a bunch of conflicts, and just kind of build and slowly consolidate power.
Yeah, when you look at like the whole Seven Kingdoms, like there's that like that comparison between the Tyrells and Lannisters.
Right.
Yeah, when you look at the Riverlands, it's like House Tully kind of is doing what the Tyrells are doing. Like you said, is that they're trying to amass more power, put themselves in a position where they're sort of in control of that that western part of the Riverlands. So which is neat. I didn't realize how close too they are to. I mean, they're still kind of centralized, but they are in the western part of the Riverlands. They're actually not too far from the Iron Islands. They would be one of the bigger houses that would sort of have to, and I think that is part of it. Like they are the defense against not only like the Westlands, but like the Iron Islands too. Because they often will raid and what have you there with the Riverlands. So, but what's neat too? Do you see this part here in the book where it talks about the? I mean, if you have more to read, that's fine too. But this the list of houses that have at one time or another ruled the Riverlands. I think this is kind of neat, actually, talking about the different houses there. So House Fisher of the Misty Isle, House Blackwood, Raventree, House Bracken. And these are houses that ruled the Riverlands, okay, as asserted in the histories. Okay, House Mudd of Old Stones, the last dynasty of the first men to rule the Riverlands. So there you go. House Justman, I think it's House Teague, last of the kings of the river and hills native to the Riverlands. House Durrandon of Storm's End, which is interesting that they're from Storm's End.
Right.
So there's that whole piece where they had conquered at one point, some of these other petty kings,
Right. Well, that's something that I think we forget a lot when we talk about these the Seven Kingdoms and stuff like that. Like, there's 9 great houses now, and there's really 9 regions.
Yeah.
Well, 9 kind of before Robert Baratheon, because then the Baratheons take over the king's area, the Crown Lands, excuse me.
Yeah.
And so if there were 7 kingdoms, there would have to be a couple that were consolidated, and it was actually, if you look at the Stormlands was huge. It goes all the way up, and it includes the Riverlands as well.
Yep. Yeah. So just kind of neat little history. And then House Hoare is again of the Iron Islands. They kind of there for the long while. What is it? The Black Heron?
Yep. Yeah, they had.
Yeah. Yep. Who ruled there for a long while too. So, do you want to keep? So, would you want to come back to the Blackwood and Bracken's feud, or in just a little bit?
Because we can go right into that if you want.
Well, we'll just read it because I think it's kind of neat. Two of these houses we hear a lot about. We hear a lot about the Blackwoods and the Brackens, and they have this feud. And we've got Melissa Blackwood, who is the mother of Bloodraven, and what's her name? Bessie.
Betha Blackwood.
I was thinking of the Bracken. Who's the Bracken?
Oh,
because you've got Missy Blackwood, Melissa Blackwood, and I think you've got Bessa Bracken. I can't remember exactly. I have to go look, but that
I'm gonna
one of the mistresses. Yeah, one of the mistresses of King Aegon the Unworthy. Okay, so the feud of the Blackwoods and the Brackens is infamous, and rightly so, for it stretches back thousands of years to before the coming of the Andals. The origins of it are contested and shrouded in legend. The Blackwoods say they were kings, and the Brackens little more than petty lords set on betraying and deposing them, while the Brackens say much the same about the Blackwoods. That they were both royal houses of the Trident seems true enough, and none can doubt that their infamy sprang from some cause so entrenched that it has become legendary. So this reminds me of the Hatfield and McCoy feud that we have here in the States. It's it's a feud that went on for so long that they actually kind of forgot why it started, its beginnings. Powerful as they were, they have maintained their feud despite the many kings who have attempted to make peace between them. Even the old king, Jaehaerys, failed in his attempt to halt their ceaseless war, for the peace he forged did not long outlast the end of his reign. So at one point he did kind of have them at least settle down and being cordial, but did not last long. So any speculation out there, as to what caused the feud? What was it that is it just vying over land or control of the Trident, the waterways in and out of the Riverlands, could be a thing, but it's like an ancient feud. It's been going on for a long time. So I think it's proximity too.
Okay, so for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and here's some of the names of So you have Barbara Bracken, who is the mother of Aegor Rivers, Bittersteel, Melissa Blackwood, Missy, who gives birth to Maya Rivers, Gwyneth Rivers, and Brendan Rivers, who becomes Bloodraven. Lady Bethany Bracken, and I don't believe she has a son. And so those are like his mistresses.
Gotcha. Yeah. Interesting. So here's, while we're on them real quick, I'm gonna do a quick little bit of digging here. House Bracken of Stonehenge. So if you look back at the map, where are they at there? Stonehenge, right there. Wow. They're pretty close to River Run, actually. Just north of High Heart. Okay. So there's that. And then let's look at House Blackwood here. Just because it comes up all the time, and it's something that I, until like a reread, I didn't really understand the relationship between these two houses. So House Blackwood of Raventree Hall is an old house from Raventree Hall in the Riverlands. So do they have that there? Isn't it just where is it located, Sir Matt? Do you see it on the map there? Raventree Hall. Where would that?
I'm looking real quick.
Doesn't actually have it listed there. Where? I just wanted to see exactly how close they were. It's something I've never really looked up.
I think they're both in the western.
Makes sense that they would be, but I mean, Stonehenge is a pretty big. It has it listed here as a castle. It's a castle, and then you get the major castle being River Run just to its west. Other castles in the area. You've got the Pink Maiden. You've got Harrenhal there. Yeah, man, I'm not really seeing another. The Twins, Seaguard.
Give me 1 second. I can find it. I'll pull up my big map.
Yeah. I'm even looking at little towns here. So they've got towns, Fair Market. You've got Salt Pans near the Quiet Isles. You've got Maidenpool, which Maidenpool comes up quite a bit. Stony Sept comes up quite a bit. And I don't really see it though on this map. So I was just gonna. You've got Blackwater Rush down there. So that's coming.
Yeah, so you have Raventree Hall is just kind of let's see here. So if you start at so you get the Isle of Faces. I don't know what map you're looking at, but if you go northwest and you run into one of the forks of the Trident,
okay,
or one of the rivers there, you've got River Run, and then Raventree is just northeast of a River Run. So it's just right there where those two kind of little rivers converge.
Oh, you mean where Tumblestone and Red Fork kind of split there off of the Red Fork?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that would make sense then because, that's what I thought. I felt like there was some proximity just in that they were close to each other. So, they're right there in the heart of it, aren't they? They're right there. So,
yeah.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. When I'm looking at this map, they often would talk about the mountains, right? What was the big they renamed those mountains, for so and so's, teats or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it was funny. I'll look it up. But anyways, so yeah, little house feud there. Definitely big players, and you'll see a lot of them in and out of the court at King's Landing. So different members of the house and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So something to keep an eye on. Not too long ago, we were just at the Inn at the Crossroads. Is a pretty big, pretty infamous inn.
Oh,
and,
for sure.
So yeah, when Catelyn Tully just not too long ago was coming through the Riverlands, she was thinking about, which way she should go, and thinking about her father. I think you've got River Road. There's this road that sort of branches off from the King's Road that she could have taken, and then you also have, and it kind of cuts across the King's Road. So it's this big road that kind of cuts across it. She could have taken over to River Run, but decides to take it east instead into the Vale. So,
yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I think, yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of more stuff on House, or the Lords of Harrenhal, which is a thing that looks like it's its own possible. Wow, that's quite a bit, man. There's so much here.
Mini chapter or something.
Yeah, there's so much here for River Run though. For the Riverlands. Where do we go next?
Yeah. So. Well, I think we can just kind of finish up here and just talk a little bit about River Run itself, the castle.
Okay.
I think it's kind of cool that that each kind of chapter finishes with kind of like the seat and just gives us a little bit of it. The seat of House Tully is small when compared to the great fortress castles of other great houses. It is not even the largest castle in the Riverlands. For Harren the Black's ruined immensity of Harrenhal could not contain 10 river runs, or could contain 10 river runs. Excuse me. Yeah. So Harrenhal is absolutely enormous. I don't think it can ever be described how big it is.
Yeah.
Yet River Run is stout and well constructed, and it's positioned at the juncture of two rivers. Surrounded by deep waters on two sides makes it exceedingly difficult to assault. Though besieged many times over the centuries, River Run has seldom been taken, and never by storm. Key to the castle's strength is the moat dug beneath its western wall where the main gate stands. Many castles in the Seven Kingdoms have moats, but few are created with complicated sluice gates, I don't know what that word is, that allow them to be flooded at need. This gives River Run's moat a depth and breadth few others can achieve. With its moat fully flooded, River Run becomes an island and all but invulnerable to assault.
Yeah, man. If you look at the photo too, if you look at this picture, this illustration, it's
in the book, which is it's a really good picture too, by the way.
It's crazy how much it's like, almost like it is at the fork of this river. It's just it's the river spreading right around it. It's amazing. So that's really cool. But yeah, there's a lot more too. I mean, like some stuff we had covered in previous previous episodes were things like, Black Heron and his rule. So we talked a lot about what had happened with Aegon's conquest and all of that. So this also kind of goes into little additional details on that. So if you want to go back and look at it, it's definitely worth it to read. It's just sort of a lot to kind of cover in one little Maester study. So, but.
Right.
I think
and we're gonna do deeper dives. This is just kind of like a broader overview of it. So,
yeah, it's something funny, guys. Just how ambitious it is to think that you could tackle every house. A podcast that we listen to, and he's a good guy. Aziz from History of Westeros. They attempted this at one point to kind of cover every house. And he often jokes like, remember when we tried that? So it's tough, it's not like it's definitely something that you can't do I mean, it's just a lot. So we want to, and but that's just a testament to how much Gur has done in this world building and stuff. And what I can't believe too is we were reading in today's chapter just how much. Well, actually, I'm sorry, it's next week's chapter, but I was kind of reading ahead. Just the characters that he brings in, the Blackfish, is in book 1.
Yeah.
And is someone who's sitting there and has an interesting past and is looked on admirably by Catelyn Tully. So it's like, I mean, he has all these characters and all these keeps and places set up. It's just amazing. So it's vast.
Okay.
All
right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the reread. This week we are in Eddard VIII, but last week we were in Arya 3. Arya was chasing a cat when Marcella and Tommen had discovered her. She escaped unidentified, but found herself in the dungeons. There she overheard two men talking about killing her father, and eventually, finding her way out, she had tried to tell her father what she heard about, but he doesn't believe her. So the last time we were in an Eddard chapter, Eddard VII, After viewing the body of Sir Hugh, Ned and Sir Barristan Selmy struggled to convince King Robert not to compete in the melee. The Hound had won the tourney when he had saved the life of the Knight of Flowers. Later, Varys had visited Ned to reveal that Robert was meant to die in the melee.
Yep.
So here we are. Eddard VIII. Ned and King Robert argue over a plot to kill Daenerys Targaryen. When the small council also sets sides against him, Ned resigns in protest. As Ned prepares to return to Winterfell, Littlefinger arrives with news that he has identified the brothel that Jon Arryn and Stannis Baratheon had visited.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Okay, there's your summary. Now let's dive into the details. So normally we kind of do thirds. This chapter is a little bit shorter, so I have it kind of divided in halves. The first part is, have you forgotten who is king here? No, your grace, have you? That's kind of a little argument they have there. And then the second part where Ned leaves and he's talking to Littlefinger back at his thing, and he says, at the moment, I can't think of anyone whose company I desire less than yours.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, okay, so let's start with this argument. You know, it's just I think it's interesting too. We just had as you read the piece with Arya and the plot, you know, here that Varys is thick in, with you know, wanting to either kind of, he either has to keep the kingdom at you know, well, from going to war with each other, or you know, he's playing. I don't know exactly what he's up to, because like here, this is one of those chapters that makes you start to think, like, why is Varys suggesting this, and he's the one sort of relaying this information, and everyone is really, you know, trusting in his word that Jorah Mormont has, you know, that this 14-year-old girl is with child, and he's bringing that in, and Ned questions it, first of all, that we're gonna kill this girl just based upon, you know, the whispers of a spider. But yeah, I mean, that's what they're going to do, you know. And so it's just so crazy that they have so much trust in Varys and his skill and his informants, that he could easily mislead them. You know what I mean? I mean, he could easily sort of drop some line, some bit of non-truth there, and have them go in a direction that he desires. So I don't know. We could talk more about that later, though, as to why he is pushing for her to be killed. You know, because I still think it's sort of murky as to how involved, you know, or what he and Illyrio's you know, original you know, plans are, and I think it only gets murky when you have like young Griff in the situation. But I'm just wondering, you know, that last chapter they were talking about that they weren't ready to ride. You know, that
right.
That Drogo would basically wait until the child was born. You know, that the signs had to be right, and then they would move. So, and now he's encouraging them to, you know, kill Dany. Is it just a facade? Is it a front? What is it? So, just my thoughts on the first little bit there.
Right. Well, you know, I'm going to go right ahead and agree with you, Sir Ezra. I think kind of the most interesting character in this first little part is Varys, when you just are kind of actually seeing what he's saying, because. There is no axe, Ned told the king, only the shadow of a shadow, 20 years removed, if it exists at all. You know, Ned is trying to say, like, hey, you know, like, you know, there's so many factors that would have to go into her, like, you know, actually coming over here. It's like she would have to have a boy. She would have to have, she, like, if the child survives, you know, it's in like a desolate wasteland, you know, or like not killed before. The child will also have to be 20 years old. And at the end of the day, you're still going to have to convince the Dothraki to cross the sea.
Yeah, correct.
And Varys is like, if Varys asked softly, wringing powdered hands together, my lord, you wrong me. What I bring lies to the king and council. This is talking about, you know, if Daenerys is even pregnant at all.
Yeah.
And you know, Varys, why would I bring lies to king and council? Well, we already know that you convinced, you know, the Mad King to open the gates to Tywin Lannister.
Yeah. Oh well, he was actually the. So it was. Remember, he told him not to, which was crazy.
Oh, you're right. I'm totally wrong in that. Yeah.
Well, no, yeah, but like
you're totally right. Yeah. But
I think
still,
that further though. I mean, so that's another thing. It's like, wait a second. Like he was trying to protect the Targaryens then. What's he doing with Illyrio now? And then why is he feeding this council this information? I think part of it is like he's trying to. Like, did he even need to bring this information at all? Maybe they thought, like, if the information reached the king and Varys the Spider wasn't the one to bring it, then perhaps, like, he would lose some of his, I don't know, like lose leverage or yeah, exactly. Right. There you go. So maybe that's a part of it, but it's also like, I mean, they're at one point debating whether or not they should have a faceless man kill her. That's a pretty guaranteed. Like if they would have went for that, well, Varys your Dothraki horde is done. If they actually do kill her, I mean he's good at smuggling people, out and away. But I'm sort of like, if Littlefinger would have found the coin for that, then it's a done deal. So.
Oh, for sure. Well, I mean, okay. So look at this. Look at this kind of next line here.
Yeah.
Varys gave the king, an uncautious smile and laid a soft hand on Ned's sleeve. I understand your qualms, Lord Eddard. Truly I do. It gave me no joy to bring this grievous news to council. It is a terrible thing we contemplate, a vile thing. Yet we who presume to rule must do vile things for the good of the realm, however much it pains us. But part of it is like, and you hear this a lot in the audiobook.
Yeah.
It's kind of the way Varys is saying it is like he's saying it in a way that's like, well, we just have to do it. And it almost sounds kind of smug. And that he's like saying it to it seems like he's saying it to like he knows this is going to drive a wedge between Eddard and Robert.
Hey, you know what? That actually might be one of the reasons why he's doing this. Perhaps he knew, because this came up on the Downs. When they were up in the Barrowlands, this discussion happened. I don't know how Varys would have known, because they rode away, to have this discussion about, her marrying Khal Drogo. And they bring that up, actually. It was a quick little line, a quick little reference to it. But it's sort of like, maybe he knew that this was, maybe he came back and, like, afterwards there's more conversation and Varys finds out that there's some, this is a crack. This is a place where in which they differ, and he can sort of, separate the two or drive a wedge between them. That's actually a really good point. So
yeah, maybe that's what he's going for. Because clearly, Varys doesn't do anything without some kind of, I mean, he clearly has some motive behind what he's doing.
Right. Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. So maybe, and this is going to seem total tinfoil hat here, but he has a friend, and I was just listening the other day to, it was actually History of Westeros, and they were talking about the wealth that these magistrates have over in Pentos, and how much money they have. I mean, honestly, Illyrio could hire his own faceless man to, intercept or hire someone else to either protect Dany or something. So it's like they could be, if that were to happen, or a sellsword is going to like attempt an assassination, but a faceless man is there to kill him right beforehand. You know what I mean? They have a backup plan for everything, perhaps. So, because he's got the wealth to do it. He's got the wealth to hire, whoever he wants over there in Pentos. So, yeah, I don't know, man. It's just really got me thinking.
I don't know. I know that's who I took the most away from this chapter is Varys, and like what is he planning on doing? What is his kind of ulterior motive here? Because as you said, if Daenerys dies, his invasion is done, unless he's already plotting about young Griff, and maybe he used Daenerys as someone to get rid of. And in the show, in the show when Varys kind of meets Daenerys, they kind of have this kind of awkward back and forth where Daenerys doesn't really seem to she challenges him, right?
Right.
And maybe that's just a way. Maybe that's a way for the show to kind of hint at, there is this other kind of plot in the books.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she challenges him because he's now serving, Robert Baratheon, and he was serving her father. Same sort of thing with Barristan Selmy, and he has to each of them have to kind of explain as to why, they serve the realm, and they need to that why they continued in their position, So, yeah, you're right. That's tough. There could be something that he. Well, yeah, I mean, doggone it, man. Actually, as far as she knows, like this is the point in time where he does send, he actually hires Jorah Mormont, to kind of keep an eye on her, and that is his informant, So I mean, that in and of itself is sort of like cause for her to, he's been spying on her. So she's even
Right.
in the book or in the show, she's pissed because, I don't know if she knows. Or if she'll know in the book that he, attempted, that he was a part of, like sending assassination, attempts for her, but she'll at least know that he was spying on her through Jorah. Actually, did he say that in the book? Did he mention as to, are we there yet? Yeah, we are. Yeah, in the book,
yeah.
As to why, as to who it was that, she knows that he was a spy for King Robert, and that he was reporting back to them, but she has to figure out, or maybe they mention it, that it's through Varys. I'd have to go look that up real quick, but I'll look at it later. But anyways, yeah. Okay, sorry, we can kind of continue on. I was just thinking out loud.
No, that's fine. That's fine. No, for sure. Hey, absolutely. We go down these rabbit holes, or we've been chasing a lot of cats lately.
Yeah, we have.
So yeah, okay. So to kind of move on, really, this is also to kind of go away from Varys a little bit here. It's really like this is a kind of big tension point between Ned and Robert, obviously.
Yeah.
Where, Ned really never liked the way that things kind of, he definitely didn't like the way that Tywin Lannister had done things. He definitely, when his men come in and obviously they murdered, the Rhaegar's children. And this is really where Ned is kind of like, I've had enough of this. I'm done. Like he's saying, it's entirely unnecessary to go kill Daenerys Targaryen, who's like a babe, or, she's like 14 herself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And and whether she lives or not. And really, if anything, they should be worried more about Viserys, because Viserys is still alive at this point.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it was that marriage that kind of caught him off guard. So really, it's like she's gonna back her brother, but what's crazy is that like all of them sort of see her as this threat, and then he still thinks that he's, in charge. It's bizarre. It's because of the, what was it? The Great Council under the Old King, and where that the heir should be, a male and not a female. So that's where he's lost in his, like, it's going to be me. Has to be me. I have to be the one who rules. So, yeah. So yeah, you're right. I think it's a battle of logic too. It's sort of like Ned's really showing to him, that like, this doesn't make any sense. This is not, you're not, one to cower before like a 14-year-old girl, the shadow of something to come. Like, this is foolish. Like that's not the Robert that I know.
For sure. Yeah.
Who's like afraid of an unborn child, and he really, I think, hits him there, and that's where he's like pissed. And it's almost like Robert's one of those guys who once he says something, he can't back down from it. So when he comes in, when Varys, it's manipulation too. Varys gives him the information. He says, "Get the council together," and he's in there raging, as we need to kill her, and he comes in. He hasn't attended a council meeting in how long. And he shows up and is making this stance. Well, then he doesn't want to lose face.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just unfortunate because it's too bad he didn't seek out the counsel of his good friend first before he goes in there. Maybe it would have gone a little different, but instead they've got him all worked up, and so there's that.
Well, there's the other angle of this too is. Which a lot of people say is, why is it that Ned is so against Robert killing Daenerys? Is it because Ned doesn't view the Targaryens as bad?
Oh yeah,
because the possibility of R + L = J.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, his nephew being like a Targaryen.
Right. Is
right.
Right. Yeah. So because remember he had when they were on that ride together, he had kind of had a similar stance against it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and whether
and so now it's coming back up, and here he is still, against this idea.
Right. Yeah, and when I say his nephew, I mean either Jon Snow or young Griff, whoever it may be. Yeah. It's like, so, yeah, I don't know, man. That's a good point. Did he learn something about the Targaryens that sort of in the end has him thinking they weren't, all bad, and we misunderstood a lot of different things, and it was just truly one, mad king who was destroying the realm, So it's sort of like the Lannisters. Sometimes you start to lump them all together at the beginning, and you think, oh, they're all, don't like them, and then they grow on you after a while. You're like, well, Jaime's not too bad, and Tyrion's the best. He's fantastic. And I understand Tywin. I get where, I learn about his history with the Mad King and the way in which he's been treated, and the insults that he took from the Mad King. He wants to kind of rule now and stuff. And even Cersei in her backwards way. Like, it's just crazy. Like, it starts off that you hate these characters, and then you're like, there's more to it than that. So that could be where Ned goes.
Actually, I find myself actually coming to like Cersei a little bit more and more as I read her, just because, I mean, at the end of the day, she just knows how to play the Game of Thrones better than everyone else.
Yeah,
that's all it comes down to. It's not that she's really evil. It's more that she's the best. She's better than everyone else. Like, if she's not out there protecting her family, someone will take advantage of it. That's just the way that the world they live in kind of works.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. Yeah. Okay. Now, another interesting part in the beginning of this is Sir Barristan Selmy.
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked. I kind of forgot that. Like, we often forget that he's a member. He has a seat on the council. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just because of the way the show does it and stuff. Like, and he's in there, and he's one of the. He's the only other one who agrees with Ned and says, yeah, we shouldn't kill her. Like, there's no honor in that, in sending a poisoner or an assassin, face your foe on the battlefield. And I think his more just comes from a place of, like, he didn't really comment whether he thought it was right or not. It's just more, or I'm sorry, whether they should. His was more about the method. You know what I mean? It was like, I just don't believe that's that's just not, face your foe on the battlefield is what he said. So, yeah.
Right, for sure. Let's see here. And then, you also have Renly in here, and he's like, mercy is never a mistake. On the Trident, and then he talks about how, Robert did, in fact, with Barristan Selmy there, that Robert pardoned Barristan Selmy.
Yeah.
Even though it was Roose Bolton who said we should cut his throat, which is obviously interesting. Because he was with the Mad King, and so I just think that that's something interesting too. And Robert tries to say that it's not the same, right? Sir Barristan was a knight of the Kingsguard, and Ned says, where Daenerys is a 14-year-old girl, and then this is where he kind of really starts to push him. He pushes him a little too far here. This is where it's kind of starting. He says, Robert, I ask you, what did we rise against Aerys Targaryen for, if not to put an end to the murder of children? And he says to put an end to Targaryens.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and so then this is the line I like here. Your Grace, I never knew you to fear Rhaegar. Ned fought to keep the scorn out of his voice and failed. Have the years so unmanned you that you tremble at the shadow of an unborn child? Robert purpled. No more, Ned, he warned, pointing. Not another word. Have you forgotten who is king here? No, Your Grace, Ned replied. Have you? And then, enough, the king bellowed. I am sick of talk. So it's just, no one else could get away with pushing Robert that far.
Oh, no. And I think that's like, it's weird because Varys kind of admires him for that, and I think even the Queen, like, people realize, like, wow, this is his friend. Like, if anybody can really speak sense to him and would be a good hand given the time, it'd be, Eddard. But he's had years of being allowed to just treat these people like this and just sort of like everyone kind of cowing and doing what he wants and stuff. And it's sort of like now his good, stern friend is here speaking good reason to him. I think Barristan Selmy also probably did that as well. And they just kind of took the lashings that, air quote lashings that the king gave each of them. But it's like, I think it's something to kind of, it's like, wow, like, but there's also this arrogance with the council in that, like, well, you just don't understand, the king here, and that this is, I don't think they don't believe that you can change his mind. They think once it's made up like this, like there's really no getting around it. Just fall in line and let's move on or whatever. But like Eddard just doesn't believe that, and so it's why, and from what he remembers a friend, who was merciful, right? And that's what actually what he tells Renly is like, yeah, he did allow Viserys and Daenerys to live, but he also allowed Ser Barristan, to live. And things, and he showed mercy there. That's the king. That's the friend that he remembers. The king who he would follow. So I don't know. It's tough.
No, for sure. Yeah, it's
a tough little scene. I think it does a lot though. I think Robert, he's pissed because Ned's right, and he's going to come back later. If everything that we know what happens, but it's sort of like if things didn't go the way, if Ned wasn't on this secret, mission and uncovering these really nasty secrets, right? That are dangerous. If he wasn't doing that, I think, the king would have come back. And you're right. I think he would have came back later and said, "I'm an idiot. Come back. This is stupid."
Right.
I really think he would have actually, just because he really trusts his friend, but he needs time. He needs to sleep on it. He needs to think about it and cool down, which is what Eddard kind of says. And he might have come back, but he might have also left too. I mean, I don't know. It's sort of a, he's in a tricky spot. And I think he senses a lot more danger just because of Jon Arryn's death and the Lannisters and the fact that, which we're going to get into it here in just a bit, but that, things that Catelyn Tully had just done that sort of are, forcing him to leave maybe sooner than he would have, in other situations. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Nope, for sure. Okay. Well, should we move on to the second kind of half here? Is that really they just keep pushing and pushing, and what ends up happening is that Ned ends up leaving.
Yep, he resigns.
Ned ends up resigning. I want to find the actual line here. Okay. I will not be part of murder, Robert. Do as you will, but you will not ask me to fix my seal to it. For a moment, Robert did not seem to understand what Ned was saying. Defiance was not a dish he tasted often. Slowly, his face changed as comprehension came. His eyes narrowed, and a flush crept up his neck past the velvet collar. He pointed an angry finger at Ned. You are the king's hand, Lord Stark. You will do as I command, or I will find me a hand who will. I wish him every success. Ned unfastened the heavy clasp that clutched at the folds of his cloak. The ornate silver hand that was his badge of office. He laid it on the table in front of the king, saddened by the memory of a man who had pinned it on him, the friend he had loved. I thought you a better man than this, Robert. I thought we had made a nobler king. Robert's face was purple. Out, he croaked, choking on his rage. Out, damn you. I'm done with you. What are you waiting for? Go. Run back to Winterfell and make certain I never look on your face again, or I swear I'll have your head on a spike. Which is obviously interesting because there's Gur foreshadowing to something else. We'd also talked in the last Arya chapter where she's worried about her father's safety, and is it Jory who says you kill, the easiest way to, I think, kill a snake is to cut its head off.
Yeah, wizard. Yeah. Yeah.
Or a wizard. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right though. Yeah, I mean you're right. In the again foreshadowing. Yeah. Oh gosh, it's terrible. Makes me so sad to think about. All right, let's not think about it. All right. Yeah. So yeah, he resigns, marches back to the tower. Summons Valen Poole and says, "Hey, it's time to get out of here." And basically, Valen says, it's going to take a fortnight, and he's like, "We might have like a day, like a day." And I also think he thought he had longer. I don't really know. I'm sure the king could have sent him a message, by way of messenger or something later that night saying, or even the next day, things are okay, etc. But he's preparing to leave, one, because he is curious about these other events. He wants to know why Stannis Baratheon has been so quiet out there on Dragonstone.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, I think he decides he's going to go on with his daughters and a few of his men, and that should be enough. And he's gonna take off, by the morrow, really, the next day. Mm-hmm. He's ready to go.
Yeah.
And he thinks there for a little bit. He thinks a while on it, and when he thinks of going to Dragonstone, he decides. Doesn't he decide to possibly go by sea, go back to Winterfell by sea, and then stop at Dragonstone?
Yeah. So that way he could make a stop at Dragonstone.
Yeah. Yeah. So he kind of tells Valen to go out and pick, make arrangements there, and then everyone else can kind of follow, in their own time. But he needs to leave rather quickly. So, and I think he also wants to get back. Yeah. He starts to long for making another son. He's like Kat and I aren't too old. We could make another son.
Yeah, she has that same kind of thought too. So
yeah, that's great. It's great that they ended up loving each other and have this good kids. So
okay. So then we kind of move to the second part where he goes back. And he's pretty much getting ready to start packing up, and he's thinking about stuff. He says, "This is after Jory. He tells Jory to get ready, but don't tell anyone." When he had gone, Eddard Stark went to the window and sat brooding. Robert had left him no choice that he could see. He ought to thank him. It would be good to return to Winterfell. He ought never left. His sons were waiting there. Perhaps he and Catelyn would make a new son, as Sir just said. They were not so old yet. And as of late, he often found himself dreaming of snow, of the deep quiet of the Wolfswood at night. And yet, the thought of leaving angered him as well. So much was still undone. Robert and his council of cravens and flatterers would beggar the realm if left unchecked, or worse, sell it to the Lannisters in payment of their loans. And the truth of Jon Arryn's death still eluded him. Mm-hmm. Oh, he had found a few pieces, enough to convince him that Jon had indeed been murdered, but that was no more than the spoor of an animal on the forest floor. He had not yet sighted the beast itself, though he sensed it was there, lurking, hidden, treacherous.
Yeah. Yep. So he's definitely leaving things unfinished, but also so he doesn't want to leave because he realizes that the realm is about to go into Lannister hands. It's indebted to them. It's we're not in a good place, but screw it, whatever. It's left to them then, and it's sad, but he needs to go back to the north. So I like there's a part too where he thinks about the rage in which Robert was in. He's just sort of he kind of thought that after 15 years he wouldn't still be raging about the mention of Rhaegar. But it says, always, suddenly, uncomfortable, he found himself recalling Rhaegar Targaryen, 15 years dead, yet Robert hates him as much as ever. So, and he says it was a disturbing notion,
right,
that he was still dwelling on this that many years later and couldn't move on. So, I don't know. And he wants to wipe out the Targaryens. So he's just so, hell-bent on it that he can't get past the idea of even the thought of Dany having a child and them coming over, or people even wishing for that. Maybe, you know what I mean? That's another thing. Is that
well, it's also probably in Robert's eyes, it's probably also a way for him to get back he's do something good in the realm, because right now he doesn't really do a lot. He just kind of kind of hangs out and drinks and whores himself and and that's just what he does. So here maybe it's kind of a view of I did something good for the realm. I killed another Targaryen.
Yeah. Yep. So, but yeah, have we talked about Littlefinger?
No, not yet.
Okay,
but we should. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's probably the next spot to go is the person who Eddard wants to see the least ends up showing up at the door. Lord Baelish, to see you, my lord. Ned was half tempted to turn him away, but he thought better of it. And he was not free yet until he was. He must play their games. Show him in, Tom. So yeah, Peter Baelish walks in, and he's very short. He just wants to know what's the point, why are you here, etc. And Peter says, "I won't detain you long. I'm on my way to dine with Lady Tanda, lamprey pie and roast suckling pig. She has some thought to wed me to her younger daughter, so her table is always astonishing. Truth be told, I'd sooner marry the pig, but don't tell her. I do love lamprey pie." So Ned's like, "Well, then get on with it. Head back. Go see her instead. That's fine." And he brings up, though, he must have been tracking. He knew that Jory had been going in and out of brothels looking for one of Robert's other bastards, and that's what he's there to offer him. Basically, is that he's found. I can take you there. Myself. And I know exactly where it's at. If you were still interested, and you want more information on that, I have it, and here it is. Come get it. So that's basically.
Right. And this is unfortunately kind of the worst thing that Eddard Stark does, because if he had just left right here and now, I think he would have been okay. But obviously we know that what ends up happening, where he gets up there, he comes out of the brothel and has a run in with Jaime, and then he's kind of stuck in King's Landing, and but Ned, he wants to see if he can get that final piece of information to kind of prove to Robert that everything and he does. There was plots to kill him, and Jon Arryn was murdered, and everything. So that Ned is still, even after this big fight, Ned is still committed to his friend.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe Peter Baelish knows that and wants to. I don't know if I actually don't even know at this point that he knows. Maybe he does know what's happened with the Lannisters, and he knows that keeping him in town a little bit longer is going to result in a confrontation. But I don't know. It seems like to me he just wanted to kind of feed more of this information to Eddard, because in chaos, Littlefinger can rise. I kind of feel like that's his thing. And so even if Eddard does get back to the north and learns this stuff, he's kind of like Stannis sitting on Dragonstone. They eventually send word to the king or something, and war breaks out, and Littlefinger can kind of do his thing. But another cool part here that Littlefinger does is he tries to say that he actually may have done the girl done more for Dany than anyone at that council, because he recommends that the crown doesn't have enough money to afford a faceless man. So hopefully some sellsword or whoever will take up the assignment, and odds of them actually assassinating or killing the Khaleesi are slim. So, he's sort of like, no one really thinks of that, do they? It's sort of a backwards way of thinking about it. But he's like, it's just manipulation. He's maybe he truly didn't want to kill Dany, but he has no one's going to listen to him, but he can manipulate them into the worst option, which is to send a sellsword after her because we don't have the money. And that's good enough. And then we're appeased and moving on, and it could take years for that to happen, if it happens at all. And then they're on their guard, so they know that people are trying to assassinate her. So he's got a good point there, and Ned doesn't really want to, give him any credit at all, because it's still, he's still musing about killing a 14-year-old girl. He's still a part of it, and there's the potential that it could, happen, and he would have a hand in it. So it's just interesting,
for sure.
So that's it, though. I think that's pretty much it for this week's chapter.
Yeah, that is pretty much the chapter. All right, let's go ahead and move on. We got a couple ravens here we want to kind of read, Sir Ezra.
Yeah, we just had a few. Honestly, we had saved the major ravens for Follow-Up Friday, and we got some stuff from the group that we'll pull for Follow-Up Friday. But these were just a couple comments that I wanted to kind of housekeeping things here. So we had Patrick Forbes had sent us a message just saying, "Hello, Sir Matt," and I got Lord Ezra, which is great.
Yeah, I was curious about that.
Yeah,
did you acquire a lordship?
I think he did that intentionally. I think he knows that Sir Ezra has a history. Okay, I have a history, and we need to talk about our histories at some point. More about where we came from and stuff. We're still kind of mystery knights, aren't we? We're hedge knights, but we're kind of a mystery. So I may have had a lordship back in the day. I don't have it any longer. And this may well be one of my old bannermen, So I may need to inquire with this one a little bit more. But he said he was sending his first message on as a patron member. Enjoys the show. Thanks for all the hard work. And I just wanted to kind of give him a shout out. So Sir Patrick, thank you. Definitely appreciate you hitting us up, and I look forward to conversing with you in the future and possibly, learning your whereabouts and where you're from. Just to recall, see if you can remember my former lordship title. So next we have I think this is Greg. This is actually a bannerman has no name, right? He says, "Good sirs, I upgraded my tier as I get so much from your show, and you both put so much into it. That is the least I could do to kick in a bit more to show my gratitude. As a faceless man, I cannot take the black, so no need for the vows, but I wanted to support the show. Thank you, gentlemen." And so I just wanted a quick shout out to anyone who, that's super, gracious, and a couple hedge knights definitely appreciate that. So we haven't been doing too well at the tourneys, so, pockets are a little, not much coin. Actually, I'm posting. So as this should be out on Monday, the Hedge Night should be up for you guys to enjoy on Patreon, and it's actually kind of reminds me that comment there, and just thinking about Sir Matt and I as Hedge Knights. Like, isn't it nice when you get a little extra coin and you can actually go get the duck on top of the meat that's roasting? That's what Dunk got. You know? He's like, I'll have them both.
And
I'll have them both. Yeah. So anything she was offering.
He found out that his armor cost way more than that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Exactly. So all right, and then we have one more here. This is from Sir Fluffhead of Gamehenge, and formerly known as Brown Ben Zaza. He says that now that I've taken the black, I cannot go by Brown Ben Zaza. I now will be known as Sir Fluffhead of Gamehenge. I just think it's great, just the evolution, which is awesome.
Right, yeah.
Hails from the Dornish marches. My words are: I come from the land of darkness. I come from the land of doom. I come from the land of Gamehenge, and from the land of the big baboon, which is just hilarious to me. So at the top of the show, we got a chance to give him a shout out. So thanks to all our patrons and everyone who has, given us that support and helped us out there. We appreciate you guys, and we look forward to kind of producing some more Black Council episodes. We got the Hedge Night done for you, and we'll be moving on to, what is it Sworn Sword next?
Sworn Sword.
Yeah, okay. The Checky Island, with the Red Widow, right? So that'll be fun. All right, so that's it for Ravens this week. Again, you can send those to btkcast@gmail.com. Hit us up there, and we've got some good ones this week. Ghost of Harrenhal is back with a couple really solid Ravens and others. We've got some good discussion going on in the group from everyone, quite frankly. So we will cover that this follow-up Friday, so be ready for that. All right.
Okay.
I think.
All right. Well, yeah, I believe it is. We want to thank you for playing the Game of Thrones. In our next episode, we will be discussing Chapter 34. I forgot to put down who it is.
Catelyn.
Yeah, sorry. Uh-huh. Yeah, Catelyn 6.
Yeah, that's actually a great chapter, guys. It's one of those I often think about, just in like leading into the Vale, learning more about the Vale. It's actually going to be a lot of fun to cover. So, yeah, we'll cover Catelyn. Is it Catelyn 6? I think, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. If you like our podcast, don't forget to subscribe, like us, write a review, leave a comment, or send us a raven at btkcast@gmail.com.
We will see you in a week, and remember that winter is coming.